Good evening, folks, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. So what are we going to talk about tonight? Well, of course, the Irish election, which is happening in just a few days' time, benefits, and the petition that's taking place to call for another general election. Is that going to happen? Probably not. Brexit and Vauxhall, and then I'm going to cover a little bit on Donald Trump's tariffs. Now, so I want to start off with the first story of today, which is, of course, what's happening in Ireland. So this is really interesting. So I'm going to show you an interview with a guy who's running as a candidate to be a TD, a member of the Irish Dáil, a member of Parliament in Ireland. And, well, let's get into the interview and then I'll explain why this is so strange. Irish people will know already who this guy is, but for people outside Ireland, I'll explain in just a moment.
I'm coming out of semi-retirement to do this for the people. I could just chill out and not do it, but they're pushing me into it and I'm going to give it a try.
You're very welcome to Henry's front bench. This is the best bench we could get behind us. You're running in Dublin Central. How come you've decided to run?
The people have asked me to run. They've asked me to run over the years, and lately they've pushed and pushed me, and I'm running.
We're here just off Sheriff Street. This is your area. This is your home.
Yes, that's correct. And I'm going to, if I get elected, I'm going to try to help them as much as I can.
You know, if we go back to your childhood, it was a difficult childhood, wasn't it? Growing up around here, not too far from here.
Yes, it was rough, but you just got on with it, and this is it.
You're genuine about this run, aren't you?
Yes, without a doubt. There's no sense in running if you're not going to be genuine and truthful. I'm here. If I get elected, I'll do what I can.
Tell me something.
Okay. So you're probably wondering, okay, well, what's the problem here? What's wrong with this guy? He seems to be, a bit rough around the edges, but he seems to be a reasonable individual. Well, is he a reasonable individual? Well, let's have a look at this. Jerry Hutch, at the very beginning, the very first phrase from his Wikipedia page is an Irish criminal. He was the prime suspect for two of the biggest armed robberies in Irish history. Known as a disciplined, aesthetic lifestyle since leaving prison in 1985, he was nicknamed the Monk by investigative journalist Veronica Guerin. Monk was also the leader of the organised crime group called the Hutch Gang and was charged but acquitted of the murder of David Byrne. Veronica Guerin, for anyone who doesn't know, she was murdered, an Irish journalist who was murdered back in the 1990s. And this guy is running in Dublin Central to be a TD. So if you think Trump is bad, in Ireland there is also a guy who's running for public office who's an Irish criminal, according to Wikipedia. This is insane. Someone robbed you with a 6-gun and some with a 410 pen. That's a good point. Yes. Yeah. At least he's he's not hiding the fact. At least with other politicians they try to present themselves as non-criminals, but which is interesting. Hutch hasn't a chance of getting elected. Hope. We said back in 2016 that there isn't a chance that people would vote for Brexit. And what happened? People, was it in 2019? Nobody's going to vote for Boris Johnson, and he won a massive majority. Donald Trump, who would have predicted Donald Trump's victory before 2016? So, Rehab said he wants to join the real criminals. Oh my goodness! Well, yeah. He won't be. He'd be in good company. Definitely, he'd be in good company. Okay, let's move on to some of the other issues that are being covered in the general election that's happening this week. Whoops.
Over the last week or so, voters have been hearing from political parties and their manifestos. They're making big promises to try and win your vote. But how often do political parties actually deliver on these promises? Very, very rarely. Well, I've been looking at Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael's manifestos from 2020 before the general election in January 2020 and looking at whether or not they delivered on those promises. And I've been particularly looking at housing because, well, it's probably the biggest issue for the majority of voters out there. Fianna Fáil's 2020 manifesto promised to build 200,000 new homes. This included 50,000 new social homes and 50,000 new affordable homes, costing under €250,000. It also...
Now, before we continue, it's also important to remember, was it enough? Well, it was actually calculated they should have been building about twice that. When it came to social and affordable housing, they should have been building about 40,000. They said that they would build 30,000.
Included a target to end homelessness, especially long-term homelessness, while they also said they would tackle the rip-off rental market. Fine Gael's 2020 manifesto when it came to housing was pretty similar. They promised to build between 35,000 and 40,000 new homes a year, including 60,000 social homes. They also said they would tackle homelessness as well as the out-of-control rental market. So, how did they do? Have they delivered on their 2020 targets? Well, the short answer, especially when it comes to homelessness and the rental market, is no. We'll take a closer look at the facts and figures. Firstly, we'll look at construction. In 2020, both Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil promised to build approximately 200,000 new homes. This included around 60,000 social homes also. So, how did they do? Well, between January 2020 and up until the third quarter of this year, just over 125,000 new homes have been built. And this includes over 26,000 social homes.
So that's not a good result. And remember, as I said, the figure that they should have been targeting would be about twice that. So twice that figure would have been necessary, but they already set the target pretty low. But even when the target was lower, they didn't actually match the target.
So construction in the term of this government certainly hasn't been at a standstill. And when you compare the figures between 2020 and 2024 and compare it to house building between 2011 and 2019, well, house building has increased dramatically. Only 10,000 homes a year were being built between 2011 and 2019. Now there's over 30,000 homes being built a year. However, Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil were still some way off their construction targets that they had set in their 2020 manifestos. When it comes to the rental market, well, the figures paint their own picture. According to daft.ie, in June 2020, the average rent in Ireland was €1,402 per month, while the average rent in Dublin per month was €2,023. Now the average rent nationally has risen to €1,955. That's a 40% increase in over 4.5 years, while the average rent in Dublin is now €2,476 a month. That's a 22% increase. Okay,
so Dublin, the most expensive part of Europe almost, saw a 22% increase in the price of rent. You can't say that you're fixing these problems when you're not fixing these problems, and these problems are actually getting worse. It's not like you kept things steady, maintained a sort of an up and down, a slight up and down. No, there's a dramatic increase here, 22% increase in the price of rent in Dublin, which is, as I said, one of the most expensive cities in Europe. Claire, thank you so much for that super chat. Hi Max, any mention of Irish unity? Well, Irish unity will certainly be on the cards, definitely something being talked about if Sinn Féin become the biggest party and if Sinn Féin join the government. So polling is very much in favour of Sinn Féin becoming the biggest party. They're all neck and neck. Sinn Féin, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are neck and neck at the moment. But there are a few days left, and I think there's a debate tonight, which would be interesting to see. Probably happening now, actually. Don't go off the stream, but it'll be interesting to see. And if there's some highlights from that, I definitely will cover it on the channel. But yes, Irish unity will certainly be thrust to the centre, to the front of the queue. I think when it's in discussions about the future of Ireland, if Sinn Féin get into power. But I think if they don't, then I have a fear that unity will be put somewhat on the back burner.
So, did Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael tackle the rip-off rental market? I'll let you decide. And how did they do when it comes to tackling homelessness? Well, the figures don't make for good reading. 10,271 people were in homelessness at the beginning of 2020. This included 3,574 children. Now there are currently 14,007.
My goodness. This is insane. This is an absolute disgrace, because Ireland is one of the richest countries in Europe. And you can see here, let me bring it back, 2020, 10,000 in 2020.
This at the beginning of 14,000.
14,000 in 4 years' time. Once again, Ireland is one of the richest countries in Europe, and there's no excuse for this. Now, why is the government not building enough houses? David McGuinness, thank you so much for that super chat. Thank you so much, David. Rent caps linked to inflation is needed. Yes. So there needs to be a limit on how much landlords can increase the rent. And it needs to be linked to inflation as well. So as inflation goes up, the rent cap goes up along with that. But it's the problem in Ireland is a lot of the TDs are not interested in fixing this problem, because there's no interest for them, because they're either landlords themselves, or they're in the pockets of these vulture funds, these corporations, these entities that are buying up a lot of property and either flogging it off for a profit or renting it out themselves, and denying people access to housing. Denying people the right to buy these properties. So it's very difficult if you're a young couple who want to get on the property ladder. You're going to buy a house, and this house has already been bought by a vulture fund, for example. And homeless children as well. Yes, it's a disgrace. Ireland is one of the richest countries, if not the richest country in Europe.
760 people in homelessness. This is an increase of 44%. While there are now 4,561 children in homelessness, that's an increase of 28%. A lot of big promises were made in 2020 when it comes to housing, and more big promises are being made again in 2024.
And what we're hearing from Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael is, no, you need to vote for us because we'll fix it this time. It's like, it's exactly like the Conservatives in July this year. They were saying, no, vote for us because we're going to fix the problems that we created. Don't worry, we'll do it right this time. We didn't fix it before, but we will fix it this time. And something like housing and homelessness is something that the government can fix if they want to, but there's no incentive, it seems. Think of the future mental health issues of children in insecure housing. Well said, Nick. Yes, being moved from pillar to post, moved around constantly. How are children supposed to, settle in a new school? How are they supposed to make friends? How are they supposed to? And also, a lot of the accommodation is, rented or emergency accommodation where you don't even have a wardrobe. Everything is just stuck in boxes. You're not able to live. It's not a home, and a home is so important for children growing up. It's important for everyone, but in particular children, because that's how they form the rest of their life. They grow from children into adults, and a stable household at the beginning of their life is fundamental for both physical health, mental health, and also future prospects. When rich countries are full of rich bastards, you're going to get this. Well said, Bill Silver. Yeah, the problem is that the government are more focused on keeping the rich rich than actually fixing these problems. And I have a feeling that the government will get a bloody nose at this election because people are tired, people are sick, people are looking around them and saying things have not improved. And I keep saying this, and I'm going to cover it later on in the US, for example, why the Democrats lost, is because the public are not happy with the status quo. They're not happy with the current state of affairs. They want change. And as we saw with Donald Trump, people are willing to vote for a narcissistic, racist, bigoted fascist if it means getting rid of the status quo. Oh, look, a rising crime. How did that happen? Yes. Is the Irish Labour Party any more like the Party is more like, is the Irish Labour Party like the UK Liberal Democrats? No, the Irish Labour Party is very much left-wing. It would be more like the Green Party. Maybe Chatty Rat can enlighten us on that. But I think the Labour Party in Ireland is much more old Labour. Maybe not as left as, it'd be more like Jeremy Corbyn as opposed to more like Ben. I forgot his first name. Hillary Ben's dad. I can't vote Social Democrats in Donegal. They didn't field anyone here. That's weird. I don't know. It's a pretty big party. I don't know why they wouldn't field anyone in Donegal. And I think this is a bit like what happened to the Sinn Féin in the past. In the last election, Sinn Féin. Tony Benn. How dare me not remember his name. It's a bit like Sinn Féin in the last election. Sinn Féin done really well, but they could have done much better if they had fielded more candidates. Liberals with balls is what we need now. Okay, guys, let's sticking with Ireland. There's a few other stories I want to cover here. Here's Fianna Fáil leader and Taoiseach or Deputy Prime Minister, Deputy Taoiseach Micheál Martin, who's ruling out a coalition with Sinn Féin. So let me explain this before we get into the video. So Fianna Fáil is the sort of left-wing, I don't know, can you call them the left-wing version of Fine Gael, which is a more centre-right party. So they're both, economically, they're both centre-right, but it seems that Fianna Fáil is more socially left-wing. Martin hates Sinn Féin, he does. And so there's a chance that you'll end up with the three main parties, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Sinn Féin, being on pretty much the same share of the vote. And they'll have to form a coalition. So somebody's going to have to form a coalition. Will it be Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael again? Probably not, because Fianna Fáil don't want to go into coalition with Fine Gael again. Is it possible that Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin form a coalition? Well, Sinn Féin and Fine Gael, no, definitely not. But Fianna Fáil is more inclined to support the idea of a Sinn Féin Fianna Fáil coalition. So, but not everyone in Sinn Féin wants to get into bed with Fianna Fáil, and not that many people in Fianna Fáil want to get into bed with Sinn Féin. So it's possible you could have some sort of shotgun marriage, but there's a risk that it would fall apart pretty quickly. Fianna Fáil would prefer to rely on other parties, but it will depend on the numbers that come in. Now, there's also the possibility of independents filling that gap. There's going to be probably a lot of independents, but the problem with independents is, as you can imagine, independents want their own niche protected. So they're there to fight for that constituency. It's not something you see a lot in the UK because of first past the post. But in Ireland, there are a lot of independent TDs or MPs, and they create a lot of problems. Because, if you have a slim majority and you need an independent to fill that gap, or a few independents, what happens is you see those independents, their constituencies being given a shitload of cash to keep them happy. And, you end up with tails wagging dogs situation, which is not very good for the party that's in power. And it's not good for the country, I think. But anyway, let's hear what the Taoiseach and Fianna Fáil leader Micheál Martin had to say.
Well, a hard no today from Micheál Martin when that question was put to him once again. It is a question that has nearly been asked on a daily basis since the start of this campaign, but his answer remains the same. He said it's not a personal issue with Sinn Féin, but it is a policy issue. He says
See, what I find funny about all of this is Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael will say that Sinn Féin should go into... So a few years ago, Sinn Féin refused to go into the Assembly, into the executive in Northern Ireland. And Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael were saying, no, for the sake of the peace process, they should be getting into government with the DUP. But when it's in the Republic, they say, no, hey, we don't want anything to do... So I keep forgetting to switch the screen. We don't want anything to do with Fianna Fáil because or with Sinn Féin because terrorism and stuff like that.
Well, a hard no today from Micheál Martin when that question was put to him once again. It is a question that has nearly been asked on a daily basis since the start of this campaign, but his answer remains the same. He said it's not a personal issue with Sinn Féin, but it is a policy issue. He says Sinn Féin's policies on things like housing, health, the economy and its stance on Europe just don't marry with the Fianna Fáil policies. And he says when people come out to vote for Fianna Fáil on Friday, they do so because they want to see their policies enacted. Now, I put it to Micheál Martin today whether he owes it to the Irish public to at least to try and find a programme for government with Sinn Féin if they are two of the largest parties returned after the election on Friday. This is what he had to say.
That is my view. It's a strongly held view, and it's legitimate in politics to have differences of policy, and that's fair enough.
Is that a hard no and it won't change after that?
Right, yeah. And the same happened in 220, same happened in 216, and we didn't engage.
Okay. Look, he said he won't engage, but the situation was slightly different in 2016 and in 2020. I think what he's doing here is because the election has not happened yet, he's putting up a wall, saying, no, we're not going to go into coalition with Sinn Féin. This is an election for us to win, But I think the situation has changed somewhat, and I think perhaps people in Fianna Fáil will be more inclined to support the idea of maybe we want to get into power, and if we can't do it through Fianna Fáil, well then the only alternative is Sinn Féin. But he may be the problem. Maybe it could be the case that the party wants to go into coalition with Sinn Féin, but its leader, Micheál Martin, doesn't. And that could be a problem for them. But I don't know whether it's the leader that will decide or if it's some sort of national executive within the party that will decide. We'll have to wait and see. But I think this is a lot of pre-election rhetoric where, no, we're not even considering the idea of going into coalition with Sinn Féin. But when the election happens, I think he may change his tune. Thanks, Suzanne. Okay, away from Ireland for a moment. So, we have to talk about the petition. Okay, we have to talk about this idea of let's have a petition so we can change the result of the general election, or let's have another general election because people were lied to. Well, news to this guy. People are lied to all the time by politicians, and there aren't general elections straight after. What happened to the 40 new hospitals? What happened to the 50,000 nurses? What happened to the 22,000 police officers? What happened to get Brexit done? We're still talking about Brexit. So while people will say, well, I'm not happy with the result, and of course people are not happy with the result, you don't get a general election straight away. And look, I think the only people who will really benefit from this is maybe Reform UK, because they can drive more angry people to their cause. Because many people look at this and go, well, yeah, maybe we should have another general election because we're not happy with the current state of affairs. Not understanding they built 40 hospitals in a Minecraft. There you go. See, they fulfilled their promise. Anyway, let's hear what this guy had to say.
I did it basically to try and give the people a bit of a voice and express how, in my opinion, the general public are feeling at the moment about the way the situation is.
They've got a mandate, though, haven't they? I mean, they swept the board, really.
They have swept the board, but the promises before they come in was that they had all the figures figured out and wasn't going to touch people's taxes. And what they've done is the complete opposite, in my opinion.
Look, when it comes to the taxes, I'm not sure what people are talking about, because they said that they would not increase taxes on working people. Now, working people don't pay national insurance. Businesses are not working people. Some people in the businesses and who run the businesses are working people. If they're paying themselves a salary, then they would pay national insurance. Is this about national insurance? Because when it comes to things like inheritance tax and capital gains. There was nothing in the manifesto saying that we're not going to increase capital gains, we're not going to increase inheritance tax. There was no mention of it, or very little. I think there was only one mention when it came to farming, when I think it was the Steve Reed, the current shadow Secretary of State, the current Secretary of State, he was the shadow Secretary of State for DEFRA. He said, we have no plans. But no plans just means we're not considering it at the moment.
But do you not think that when people voted on the 4th of July, what they were doing was giving the Labour Party, now the Labour government, a full 5 years to be able to do what they were promising?
Yeah, I do agree to that. But what they promised and what they're delivering is, in my opinion, is a different thing altogether.
Yeah, I think we should give them a bit more time, though.
We should, of course, and let's be truthful about it.
But then why did you start the petition? If you're saying, yeah, we need to give them more time, then why are you calling for a general election now? This guy doesn't make a lot of sense.
Go create another general election? I very much doubt so. So they will get the time, of course they will. But the concern is they've been in with 5 months. It's been very doom and gloom. The budget, which they've brought out, is going to affect next year, if not the year after. So, as a small businessman looking long term, you think to yourself, okay, they're in for 5 years. If this is the carnage I've called in 5 months, what the hell is 5 years going to look like?
Do you remember the last 5 years? Do you remember what the Tories did? Do you remember people not being able to access their GPs and still not able to access GPs? People having to wait years for NHS appointments. Do you remember all of these things? Do you remember the mini budget under Liz Truss? This guy seems to have some sort of amnesia, completely forgotten what the Tories were doing. Now it seems that he's either a Reform UK supporter or a Kemi Badenoch supporter. So obviously he wants the Tories back in power, because that's what would happen. If there was a general election tomorrow, the Tories will be back in power. Now, how would that improve things? Do you think that the Tories would automatically get rid of this national insurance hike? Maybe. And then what would they do? They would cut some public services. They would impose austerity once again. How good was austerity for ordinary people? Look, is what Labour is doing, I'm extremely critical. I think the winter fuel change was a bad idea, both economically and politically. The national insurance hike, I think it would make more sense to put it on the richest in society, a wealth tax to cover that. Because there are, we'll have to wait and see, but there is a possibility that many employers will either not hire people, they will not increase people's wages because of the national insurance contribution hike, or they will decide, look, we're going to have a freeze on recruitment, or we're going to. So what we'll probably see is a number of people laid off, but that won't be the whole figure, because some people will have their wages cut, or they'll have their wages frozen, which is because of this national insurance hike. Some of these costs will have to be paid by the consumer as well, so some businesses will pass it on. Smaller businesses with just a few employees probably won't be impacted that much. But if you're a big company with hundreds or thousands of employees, you'll either take the hit to your profits or you'll pass it on to the consumer, and that's a problem. I'm not saying, look, is Labour better than the Tories? Infinitely better. But what they're doing is not great. And there's a risk for them if they're not able to turn things around and improve people's lives. There's a risk that they will be kicked out. And who will get back into power? Probably the Conservatives. And you could see some sort of conservative reform coalition. Things can always get worse. Okay, so while people may be thinking, look, this is pretty shit, can't get any worse than this. Yes, it could get much worse. Nigel Farage could be Prime Minister. A few months back, I thought such an idea was completely absurd. But Donald Trump is back in the White House, or soon to be back in the White House. look at what's happening. So very strange things can happen all the time. So is it highly likely? No, but there's a possibility. The possibility is still there, and it's growing all the time. And if Labour are not able to turn things around, and it's going to be very difficult for Labour because you have everything running against them. You have everything against them at the moment. The economy is not doing very well. Donald Trump is planning to impose economic sanctions upon himself, which of course is going to impact others. These tariffs that he's planning to impose. So this is going to impact some UK exports. This is a problem. But also, if the EU and the US are in some sort of trade war, then the UK could suffer the fallout from that. It's not necessarily an issue of just trading with the US. There's a possibility that the UK could suffer from some of the fallout, which is, of course, not good for ordinary people. Guys, we're about halfway through the stream, so I just want to take a short comedy moment, and we'll be back in just a jiffy with more serious stuff. Hope you enjoy this.
Hello, it's your favorite president. Now that I made all our deportation dreams come true, we reclaimed every single job that was taken by illegal immigrants. And let me tell you, folks, there were so many. I call them brown jobs. Jobs we were born to do and do what Americans do best.
I carry this old guy to the bathroom about 3 times a day. I gotta go.
And now America can get back to work like it's never done before.
I used to stay home and watch Real Housewives, but now I got to work 3 shifts in a row.
I hate other people's children and their poop.
So let's get busy, America. Go do all those brown jobs you wanted so much.
Let's go, ladies. Those beds won't change themselves.
Uno, dos, tres.
And show the rest of the world what we are made of. Look at me, I'm doing a brown job too, but just for 10 minutes.
Really hate that sad loser, Mr. Newberger.
Thank you, AI, for the great things that you have given to us. Oh my goodness. Okay, let's move on. So, as I said, the government plans to introduce punishment, let's call it punishment for people who are on benefits at the moment. So this is Good Morning Britain this morning.
To work, today it's pledging a £240 million investment to target and tackle the root causes of unemployment.
And parts of the country with the highest levels of joblessness will get extra NHS mental health support with a greater focus on prevention to stop people becoming ill in the first place. The Work and Pensions Minister, Alison McGovern, joins us now. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Suzanne.
We've been having this debate on the programme this morning that there are obviously people with genuine reasons that they can't work, and they've been getting in touch with us. They might be physical disabilities, they might be that employers can't accommodate their particular challenges, or they might simply be that they have a mental health issue. But how many of the people who are currently jobless would you classify, using the word of Daily Mail journalist Andrew Pearce, as shirkers?
Like, how could you come up with a figure? How could you actually know how many people are not doing the job because they couldn't be bothered? Like, the only people who you could actually identify as people who couldn't be bothered are people who come forward and say, I just can't be bothered, because most people would come up with an excuse if they didn't want to do the job. But I keep saying this. There's an unnatural focus on a very, very small minority. The media love this. Right-wing politicians love this. Let's focus on a minority that isn't even worth talking about, that don't want to work. And we have to focus on those people and punish everyone because of those people. Instead of actually focusing efforts on people who want to work and are desperate for some sort of support, people who are like, I was working, I had mental health issues, I had burnout, I had other issues. Now I want to get back into work, but I need to refresh my CV, or I need to upgrade it, or I need to do some skills training, or I need to do something. I need help. Can you help me out? Why can't we focus on those people as opposed to focusing on this phantom menace that we don't even know how many there are? Like, it's probably a very small minority, but why is there always this focus? Good Morning Britain is going downhill. It's like GB News. Let's focus on a small minority of people who aren't really all that important and forget about the majority who are important.
Well, I just try to think about the facts and the things that we do know. And roughly speaking, of those people who are out of work because they're not well, at least 20% of them tell the survey that we have that they do want a job. You know, we've got some people who are really unwell, but we've got people.
Thank you so much, David McGuinness. The sweet smell of a red Tory. Labour keeps saying that they don't want to be like the Tories, but if you keep entertaining ideas like this, we need to be tough on immigration, we need to be tough on benefits, we need to be tough on X, Y, and Z, then you come across as a Tory.
Who are out of work because they're not well and they do want a job. So we need to focus help on those people. You know, I think in this debate...
So just to establish... Do you think that every single person currently of the millions who are out of work and say they have...
You notice that this reporter never asked, do you believe that every single farmer who was at the protest, did she ask these farmers, did she ask the people who are representing the farm, do you believe every single farmer is going to be impacted by this change in the inheritance tax? Or is not going to be impacted, whatever way you want to phrase the question. No, she didn't. Why is it we're not going to grill the farmers who are out protesting, but we're going to grill the idea, not so much the minister themselves, because it's not really impacting the minister, but we're going to grill the idea that there are a lot of people out there gaming the system.
For instance, a mental health issue. Do you think that every single one is genuine? Because frankly, we can talk about all of the detail, but when you get into a sort of public debate about it, that's what you're constantly being told by people. There are people who are simply lying about the fact that they can't work. I mean,
and how do you determine whether somebody is lying or not? Do you hook them up to some sort of system? Give them lie detector tests? Lie detector tests? Is it, do you interrogate them? Do you break them down and then rebuild them and then discover actually these people were telling the truth? Oh, we tortured these individuals for 12 hours and then we discovered that they are actually disabled, or they are actually having mental health issues. So we'll send them on their merry way.
Just wonder whether you think that's genuine and what proportion of people you think that applies to.
Well, I think it applies to a very small proportion. I don't think that we have a really good estimate, but I think it's very small. And the reason why I think that is because that all of the evidence that we have says that people do want to work, and particularly those with health conditions have faced significant challenges. When it comes to the kind of public discussion here, I think two things are really important. Firstly, we need everybody to have confidence in the system. That means there being rules. So if you receive social security, if you get universal credit or another benefit, there are certain things that you have to do, and we should.
I fall into this trap. We should stop calling them benefits. They're entitlements. Because a benefit gives you this idea that it's something extra. It's not something extra. It's something you're entitled to. You call this journalism? Well said, David. Yeah, thanks a lot. Now, this GB News. Good Morning Britain abandoned journalism a long time ago. But unfortunately, channels like this get a huge amount of views and they're able to influence public opinion.
Should all take responsibility for doing those things, and people need to have confidence in the rules. The second part is that I wouldn't blame any person with a disability or with a health condition for feeling quite worried at the moment. We know that it is hard to get a job if you've got, a condition that goes up and down and you're a bit unsure about how it's going to affect you. And we also know that the NHS has completely fallen over. The Tories have left us with an NHS that is not functioning well at all. So I don't blame anybody who's in that position for being scared. And so the public discussion has got to give people confidence and also give those people who want a job and who need help and support the confidence that they're going to get it.
The problem is, Alison McGovern, that sounds very thoughtful and very kind, but the Sunday newspaper...
But what we want to hear about sticks. We care... You want to be compassionate, or you want to portray yourself as being compassionate, but we don't. We want a limit on the compassion here. Now we want to hear about sticks.
Were full of articles and headlines from the Prime Minister Keir Starmer and from your boss, the Secretary of State Liz Kendall, saying we are going to take benefits away from young people who won't take jobs. We're going to crack down on this benefit culture. They're saying something very different from you. They're saying that they are going to crack down on people who are defrauding the system. So isn't the answer to Susanna's question?
What about people who are avoiding paying their taxes? How about clamping down on those people? How about naming and shaming those people? Like, the amount of money you can get by squeezing a few poor people is insignificant to the amount of money you could get by shaming a few multimillionaires and billionaires. But we don't do that because the multimillionaires and billionaires donate to political parties. So they're protected by the status quo, protected by the establishment. We're not going to go after the multimillionaires and billionaires, because if we do, then who's going to fund our political parties? And that's why I keep talking about why we should have publicly funded political parties. When you take the money out of the system, there's no incentive to protect multimillionaires and billionaires. Just think about it for a moment. If we had publicly funded political parties, Wes Streeting was completely against that idea recently. He said, oh no, that'd be a waste of public money. I wonder why. You would take all these donations out, and then the political parties would be answerable to whom? They'd be answerable to the voters. So they would have to represent the interest of voters. And the voters would like to see greater wealth equality, more income equality. Voters don't like the idea that there are multimillionaires and billionaires who are making huge amounts of money and not paying tax, but also companies like Amazon, which are not paying their staff enough to get by, and these workers have to rely on in-work benefits. You have one of the richest companies in the world who's not paying its staff enough, and that staff has to rely on the state, the taxpayer, to top up their wages so that they can buy things like food, luxuries like food. And if that's still not enough, well, they can head down to the food bank. And this is all perfectly acceptable. This is all normal. Because the public have been convinced the biggest problem in society this week is people who may be gaming a system where they might get an extra 70 or 80 quid a week.
That yes, there are those people and you're cracking down on them.
There are people who have criminally defrauded the social security system. There was an absolutely horrendous case that was prosecuted last year, about 18 months ago, of a group of people who, worked together to steal money from the social security system completely fraudulently. And I was absolutely disgusted by that case. I read Keir's article on Sunday, and he quite rightly pointed out the effect that having his first job had on him, that sense of confidence.
It's really condescending when they start talking about, well, I used to have a job, I used to do a paper round, or I used to look after children as a babysitter, and it gave me a great sense of of a work ethic. These people are not the problem. They're not the problem. The problem is the people who are not willing to pay tax, the people who are, funneling money into offshore bank accounts, the people who are truly gaming the system, the people who are buying politicians to change the law to benefit them. Those people are the problem. David, thank you so much for that super chat. Here comes YTS Mark 3. I'm not sure what that means. Exploitation of the young. There are politicians who would be very happy with, I'm not saying that they're in the Labour Party, but there are politicians who would be very happy to strip away all protections for workers, to send children up chimneys again, really. And I'm not just talking about Jacob Rees-Mogg. I kind of think of the right words. Universal living allowance doesn't sound correct. We need a universal basic income. Okay, I saw the messages before. Universal basic income where people are lifted automatically, immediately out of poverty. No need for benefits or entitlements. Just give people a UBI, universal basic income, where they're able to pay their rent, buy food, and link it to inflation. So as inflation rises, as the price of things increases, the UBI goes along up with it. How would we pay for it? Well, we could have a transaction tax. Everything we buy, we sell, there's a small percentage of that is gone to the state where it covers some of that. And then we could have a wealth tax as well, because it's insane that there are people who have so much money that they could never spend it in 100 lifetimes. And that money is not from them, working their fingers to the bone. It's because of them being lucky. Them using the current system to benefit themselves. I said this before. Somebody could become a millionaire through luck. But in order to become a billionaire, you need to have a corrupt system. You notice that there are fewer billionaires in systems, in economies, where there is less wealth inequality. So we have strong regulations, where you have strong union protection, where you have good standards for workers, you have fewer billionaires. There will still be a few billionaires, but where there's the most poverty, where you see the greatest contrast between rich and poor, you end up with that facilitates billionaires. And of course, if you want to game the system, you need money, and politicians are always there with their hand out. I need to fund my campaign. Give me some money, and then I'll give you a PPE contract or something like that down the road. Film Nerdy, thank you so much for that super chat, very kind of you. People get benefits wrong. Had my ex-partner who said unemployment was generous, but he was living with his parents. I didn't, and I had to live hand to mouth. Literally was a horrible experience. I'm sorry to hear that. Who said unemployment was generous. See, because where did they get the information from? From the Daily Mail or the Sun or GB News or Talk TV? It was a time when they'd say, well, they'd hear about these stories about people, getting a free car or going on holiday 3 times a year or getting, receiving huge amounts of money through benefits. And then, if you actually found yourself, because the people pumping these stories would never have to rely on benefits. But any ordinary person who has had to rely on benefits, they were entitlements. I keep falling into the trap on these entitlements. As soon as they go to claim them, they face a brick wall. They're told, oh, well, you're not allowed this, you're not allowed that. And there's the pressure of, well, you have to go and find a job. You have to find a job, have to find a job. You have to fill out, 300 CVs this month. How many CVs have you sent? How many job interviews have you done? And then there's this constant pressure of, you have to do this, X, Y, and Z. And if you don't, you'll have your benefits cut or your entitlements cut. The reality is very different, as anyone who has been on benefits knows that the reality is completely different to what you see on Benefit Street or you hear about in the newspaper. There's a reason why it's a news story if somebody travels around the world 3 times a year on benefits. Because if it was normal, then it wouldn't be news. That's what people need to think about. Oh, there must be something strange here because the newspaper is putting it on the front page. No, universal basic services, stop paying profits with public money. Well said, Patrick. I support I think a universal basic income would be a good stepping stone to something much better, like Star Trek. But the idea of universal basic service, where we have services available to all, like universal healthcare, where we don't have a two-tiered system where, well, the rich jump the queue. No, we have a one-tiered system where everyone gets the same treatment and it's based on need as opposed to based on income. Thanks so much for that, Patrick. Very kind of you. And you happen to be in the United States, so you have my condolences for the next 4 years. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I'm going to cover a US story in a little bit later on. Peter, thank you so much once again for that super chat. I have my house through lock and pay no rent. I watch your channel to keep me grounded. And I hope you enjoyed the video I put up the other day from you, Peter. So it gave me a bit of a chuckle. Thanks so much for that. If I'm keeping you grounded, then you're in serious trouble. No. Okay, let's move on. Oh my goodness. No offense to the Americans, but I had to cover this story because it just doesn't make any sense to me. The end of woke, or is woke over? So this is something, of course, that's been imported from the US. Breaking news: ceasefire in Lebanon from 2 a.m. says Joe Biden. That's great news. Thanks for that update, Chatty Rat. What about Gaza? We'll have to wait for that. But it seems that, there's been news about this over the last few days about how maybe Israel and Lebanon have come to some sort of agreement. Israel believes that they've destroyed Hezbollah. So anyway, let's jump into this story from Times Radio.
James, you've been writing in the Times today that the woke movement may have lost its confidence and have just been a fad and basically be over. Talk us through it.
What is the woke movement? So this is, once again, thanks for reminding me. Thanks, Peter. What is the woke movement? I don't understand what the woke movement is. So you know what I think. We'll get to this in just a moment, I promise. What I think the woke, what the right wing describe as woke, is a sort of virtue signaling being done by corporations. So corporations know that if they want to continue making a profit, they have to, in a sense, pander to people. And it's not, and this isn't about wokeism or anything. It's just pandering to people. Something new, pander to it. Now, corporations don't want to do things that would really impact people's lives, like, I don't know, pay higher wages or support the expansion of trade unions. Encourage people, their employees in particular, to join trade unions. That would be pretty woke. But it's cheaper to say, no, we're green, or we're inclusive, or we are this, or we are that, or let's throw some money at a charity or organization or non-government organization and pretend that we actually care, when in reality we care just about the bottom line. But we understand that if we pretend to care, this can help us financially. So these corporations, big companies, have over the last few years realized, well, we can make some. If we virtue signal, we can maintain the bottom line. We can increase our profits. We can reach out to a new market maybe. But if you look at how they actually operate, nothing has really changed. Inside the company, on the surface level, they're more inclusive, whatever. But if we're talking about clothing companies, for example, they still get most of their materials from places like Vietnam or China or India, where the working conditions are terrible, and human rights in many cases don't even exist. So the companies will pretend to be woke, and I think this is what it's more about than actually improving people's lives or conditions. Anyway, let's jump into this.
Yeah, well, roughly that. I mean, fad isn't quite the word.
Roughly that is
I
a
would
great
use.
way of saying no.
Yeah, no. Well,
Isn't
actually,
the word
it does mean
fad
roughly
in the
that.
headline?
Yes and no. The word fad's in the headline,
Right.
but not in my argument.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I actually haven't written about wokeness for a while, and there's a period of my life when I was sort of writing constantly about it, which is maybe a sign of something. I'm just always fascinated by this movement, which sort of has basically followed me my entire adult life. As I say in the column, I remember at university reading in a student newspaper that there was a trend for people wearing lensless, like hipster glasses for fashion purposes when I was at university. And there's an article in the student magazine saying this might be ableist and offensive to people with
difficult,
who are short-sighted.
Who writes these stories? Honestly, I think a lot of this concept of woke isn't actually real. It's just something that's been promoted on social media, or it's been attacked by right-wing media, saying, "Oh, this is what it's all about." We're not allowed to say X, Y, or Z while they're saying X, Y, or Z. Or somebody has been cancelled, and then they're describing how they were cancelled when they're on LBC. They're on LBC explaining how they're cancelled, and at the same time they're promoting their book.
And I kind of thought, this is totally mad, but this will all blow over. When I get into the adult world, it'll seem like a student thing and I'll never hear from it again. I've then spent my entire career writing about it. So I'm always fascinated by its progress. And there are some interesting signs, I think, that it is not quite the force that it once was. The big news that I actually heard reported on Radio 4 of all places is that the Democratic progressive Congresswoman Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez has taken her pronouns out of her Twitter bio, so it no longer says she/her.
Henceforth.
Oh my God! It means so. This means woke has completely come to a crashing halt. It means woke is over because a politician has decided to remove some pronouns from our profile This is all you've got? I thought this great scourge on society was defeated, and all you can come up with as an example is one politician who decided to remove pronouns.
We'll have to guess them.
Yeah, we'll have to try and work out what those are for ourselves. And people have been saying that's quite interesting because this is a real mark of I'm a woke person, I'm progressive, and she's kind of stepped back from that a little bit. There's a good piece by the philosopher Kathleen.
I think it's because the Democrats in the US believe that's the reason why they lost the election. Oh, we were too woke. How about we go in the opposite direction? How about we take a step back? Maybe that will convince people to vote for us. It's the economy, stupid. Cahill, thank you so much for that super chat. The final debate on debates on Telly Earn on RTE in a few minutes. Mary Lou set to have a field day. Any chance Simon Harris loses his seat? I have a strong inkling that Simon Harris will lose his seat. If he's not able to recover from that disastrous interview he had with a member of the public, then he's going to lose his seat. It would be pretty bad. Has a leader of a party, who was in government, lost their seat before? Maybe some of the political junkies can point out an example, but I think it would be pretty unprecedented. But it'd be, I think Fine Gael, like, I'm not very good at making predictions, but I would say that it's either Fianna Fáil or Sinn Féin will become the biggest party. It's really a toss-up, I think, between Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin. Fine Gael are probably going to be way down. Maybe they'll definitely be in third place. The public are it's strange how the public are more angry with Fine Gael than with Fianna Fáil. Maybe because Fine Gael is, they have the role of Taoiseach. But it's interesting how Fianna Fáil is actually benefiting at the expense of Fine Gael. It's like the public don't know who was really in charge over the last number of years, and they're like, it must have been Fine Gael because the Taoiseach was from Fine Gael, so we're going to punish Fine Gael. Yeah, going to switch from, we don't like the last government, so I'm going to vote for Fianna Fáil. Doesn't make a lot of sense, but the transferable vote, that's the thing. It's where people will. It's which parties will benefit from other parties. So that's how the system works in Ireland, where you can your preferential vote will have a huge impact. So who you vote for in the first round, and then how the second round is counted. But I think Simon, I wouldn't bet on him losing the seat, but he'll definitely take a bit of a beating, I think, in his constituency. Thanks so much, Cahill. Manchurian Candidate says, hi, consider yourself an activist or journalist? Neither, just some two-bit gob on a stick ranting on YouTube. My friend Alex, who runs the Sunday Roast, I think he applied to become a journalist. He's officially a journalist, which gives him access to some interesting areas. I would definitely consider it if I did a bit more traveling. So I would like to travel a bit more, not at the moment, but maybe in the near future. I'd love to visit Brussels, maybe interview some politicians there, visit the UK, London, Westminster. Be great to get into Westminster, interview people in Westminster, even Lee Anderson. Might even consider that. Thanks so much for that super chat. We have also one from Brad. Thank you so much, Brad. J.K. Rowling, Rosie Duffield, and Graham Linehan have formed a band. It's called Turf. Turf, Wind and Fire. Good one. You're an influencer. I hate the term influencer. Like influencer, like stand like this and hey, and then charge put out an image and get like hundreds of millions of views, and then people pay me to wear these things or whatever. God, I'm wearing this because I love it, and it was a very kind gift from members of the channel. Anyway, let's move on. Because the time is working against us. I just wanted to cover quickly this clip here from about the US, if it loads. Here we go. So it's from Pod Save America, why Harris lost. And this is from a senior advisor to Kamala Harris.
It's always worth reminding people, it's really hard for Democrats to win battleground states. Let's look at Pennsylvania. 25% of the electorate is liberal, roughly. 34% is conservative. By the way, in most battleground states, that conservative number is over 40. So in every battleground state, there's more conservative than liberals. So in Pennsylvania, if X is to believe, Trump won conservatives 91.8, Harris won liberals 93.6. Moderates, Harris won 56.43, but you kind of got to win 60% of them, right? For Democrats to win battleground states, it is a false choice. You want to maximize your base, of course. And that was a place where we spent enormous time, a lot of resources. That's critical. And obviously, I think in Milwaukee, just to use that as an example, we hit our turnout targets, fell a little bit short in Philly and Detroit. So that's not good. That's part of the equation. You've got to couple that with dominating in the middle, not just winning it a little. We have to dominate the moderate vote. And I think as we look ahead to 26 and 28, particularly where you have seen drift amongst non-college voters generally, particularly those of color specifically, we obviously have to get some of that back. We can't afford any more erosion there. The math just doesn't fucking work.
Will the DNC ever wake up to the fact that they're not pushing policies that help ordinary people? They're pushing the status quo. And I keep saying this, the election is a referendum on the incumbent. So who was the incumbent? Joe Biden. Why the heck was Joe Biden? Why the hell wasn't he replaced in 2020? For the new election, for this election. Like, why did he run again? He had said when he won the election back in 2020, he said, look, I'm not going to run again. I'm going to be a one-term president. Instead, he was like, no, I'm going to run again. And the DNC went along with that. I sometimes think about what would have happened if Bernie Sanders had won the primary. Imagine if Bernie Sanders had, if Bernie Sanders had been president, he would have definitely won in 2020, but. Because what was the rejection to Donald Trump? It was because he was crap. People didn't feel better. So there was an opportunity to put somebody in. And the public were like, okay, anyone. Joe Biden, we don't even care. We don't care. As long as a potted plant could have beaten Donald Trump in 2020 because the public were completely against him. They were turned off. And the same thing happened this year. The Democrats did not improve people's lives to an extent that they could feel it. And I still don't understand why they keep talking about, well, there are moderates and there are Democrats and there are liberals and then conservatives and Republicans. The general public may identify a particular way, but they will vote the other way if what's offered to them is better, or they're convinced that what they're being offered is better. Why do the Democrats not understand this? They keep going. We heard there's the news today or yesterday that Kamala Harris is considering running again. Will Democrats listen to me? Of course not. They don't even know who I am and I have no influence over them. But to anyone who's in the US, reach out to family member, reach out to somebody within the DNC if you can, somebody within the Democratic Party. They have to look at, why did Trump win? Why did people vote for a neo-fascist, narcissistic, racist, sexist, woman grabber, whatever you want to call him? There's a whole list of convicted felon, criminal, all of these things. You can list them off of what Donald Trump is. And people voted for that. Why did they vote for that? Because the alternative was shit. Because they were not happy with the status quo. Now, we as political junkies were looking at this going, how the hell can people vote for this guy? Don't they know who he is? Haven't they seen what he's done? No, the public don't care about these things. The public only care about what's happening to them. And it doesn't matter if you have the backing of Taylor Swift or all the celebrities in Hollywood. It's been shown. It's completely useless. I said that after the election, it would have been better if Kamala Harris had met with a single mother in Michigan, for example, sat down with her and asked her, what are your problems? And at the end of that interview, Kamala Harris had convinced her that it would be better to stay with the Democrats. That's what she should have done. I made that video, put it out, promoted it as much as possible, instead of focusing on celebrities who are like, yeah, I'm with you and I'm voting for her and I'm back. People want to hear somebody who's like them, and they need to feel that things are improving. This is going to work in the opposite for Donald Trump. Donald Trump is talking about putting up tariffs, imposing tariffs on imports. This is going to drive up the cost of living. Donald Trump is saying, I'm going to make your life cheaper. I'm going to bring down prices. You can't bring down prices unless you're talking about deflation. So prices are going to go up. He was, I'm going to make energy cheaper. Yes, but prices are still going to go up. Prices are not going to drop. Okay? Hope Boris is not watching this. Thanks, Peter. But Donald Trump is going to suffer if people do not feel better off. The Democrats could put anyone up against Trump if Trump is running again. It's possible that he won't run again. It seems strange because Donald Trump wants to stay in power until he dies. So I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to change the system so he can stay in power again. But let's say for the sake of argument he doesn't, the Republicans will be running on Donald Trump's record. And people will not feel better off unless he does something dramatic. And if they don't feel better off, they're going to kick him out. Doesn't matter who the Democrats could put up a comedian. They could put up anyone, a potted plant, and it would beat Donald Trump. Now, of course, it'd be better to put up somebody who's decent, somebody who's good at things, somebody like Bernie Sanders, who actually is authentic. That's the difference between Bernie Sanders and the other candidates, the other people in the DNC, the Democratic National Convention Committee have put forward. Because Bernie Sanders actually believes the things he says. It's interesting that when Bernie Sanders lost the primary, he went straight back to being a senator and kept, plugging away, saying, I may have lost, but I'm not giving up the fight. And he continued to fight, and he continues to fight. Kamala Harris, what did she do? She went on holiday. She's still the vice president. Why isn't she fighting for people now? Donald Trump is going to come in January. What the heck is Kamala Harris doing at the moment? Licking her wounds. She should be fighting for people. She said that she cares about people. Why isn't she putting in trying to do whatever she can to improve the situation for people before Donald Trump comes in? Why isn't she pressuring Joe Biden to do stuff to help ordinary people today? This is why I believe they're full of shit. I'm sorry. These people don't care. Bernie Sanders is somebody who actually cares. But it would be great to have somebody who actually cares going up against the Republicans in 2028. But it's going to be a case of, do you want more of the Republicans, more of what Donald Trump represents, or do you want to get rid of that? And I think this is how elections are going to be going forward. It used to be, well, I always vote Republican, or I always vote Democrat. And I think those types of people are gone, or a significant number of them are gone. And your average voter is much more flexible, and they'll vote for, well, if things are better. AOC in 2028 would be interesting. Don't think it'll happen. It would be interesting. Yes, it would. A fresh face. But I think the problem for her is the media treat her like a child. Like she's young, but the media treat her in a really bad way. Treat her in a way that like a young man wouldn't be treated. It's pretty sad because she's a really articulate individual, and she'd be great. She's somebody who actually cares about people. She's like, a sort of young version of Bernie Sanders. It'd be great to have a president who actually cares about people, who can. The problem with the Republicans pretend to care about people, and people believe them. And then they get shafted when the Republicans are in power. Oh, well, we care about, working class people and people in the Rust Belt. We care about all these things. And then as soon as they get in, they're like, okay, tax cuts for the rich and cut welfare. Punish the poor and benefit and reward the rich. But Bernie Sanders or AOC are somebody who would actually, if they could, they would push through policies that would benefit people, ordinary people, real people. Not corporations. Max, the majority of registered voters are independent. And then speak to them. Say, look, if any Democrats are listening to this, one question you should be asking over the next 4 years to everyone is, are things better? Are you better off? Have things improved? Because if things have improved, then you can just close up shop and wait until the next cycle. That would be, there's no point wasting your time and effort and money and just wait until the next. But if people say, no, I'm not happy, Donald Trump promised me X, Y, and Z, and, gas prices are higher, or, we can't move house because it's too expensive, or we can't send our kids to college because it's too expensive, or we can't do X, Y, or I'm going bankrupt because of medical bills, then if people reach out to people, ask them what, are you happy with that? Would you prefer something better? There is an alternative. You can vote these charlatans out. The US needs PR and more parties, yes, but that's not going to happen for God knows how long. Sorry. Whoa, we're way over the time, so I better knock this on the head now. But I just want to cover one story before we finish, and it's a Brexit related story because it has to be. So here we go. Hey, why is that back up on the screen?
All right, now some breaking news to bring you here. And the owner of Vauxhall, Stellantis, has announced plans to shut down its Luton van-making factory. That decision puts more than 1,100 jobs at risk. Stellantis, of course, which owns the Vauxhall brand, reported to be looking to close its Luton plant. Let's bring in our business correspondent.
Okay, so Vauxhall are planning to close their Luton plant. Back in 2023, a year ago, fears for Vauxhall Luton plant, Vans plant future due to Brexit. of course, you have your blue tick here who's saying, "Oh, the economy is going down, especially under Labour government." Guy with not that many followers. And there we have it. Once again, so supply chains are so important to car manufacturing. And we've seen it with Nissan as well, where the companies reach out to the government and say, can you help us out? And if you don't help us out, well, then we're just going to move operations somewhere else. But I think this is more, so this is partly due to Brexit. It's partly due to China as well. We're importing a lot more from China. Chinese cars I think we're seeing a parallel between what's happening now with Chinese cars and what happened to European manufacturers back in the 1980s when a lot of Japanese cars arrived. The Japanese cars were better made, they were cheaper, more reliable. They didn't look as good, but people were like, I care more about reliability and low cost. And people were moving away from European cars, and they were willing to buy Japanese cars. And they were a lot happier with them. And I think we're seeing something similar with Chinese vehicles. I'm seeing a lot of MGs, for example, which are built by Chinese company. MG and Volvo, as Frederick has said, are now Chinese owned. We're going to see, and they're able to build them. See, it's not just a case of copying, because that was a thing back in the early 2000s. Oh, well, the Chinese are just copying everything. We can still maintain our standards, higher standards, but the quality that's been put out by China is amazing quality vehicles, and the price is very low, and that's something that's to their advantage. Now we can. Oh, I missed a super chat. Apologies for that. Oh. Saskia, thank you so much for that super chat. I say labor, I'm not worthless. Libor, sorry. I say to Libor, I'm not worthless. Well said. Thank you so much for that. Once again, about the benefit, it's like this idea once again of punishing people, punishing the most vulnerable in society. For what? To show that we're tough with some voters. Thanks for that. But will people vote for Bernie? The media is completely against him. But Bernie Sanders some years ago went on the Joe Rogan podcast. Bernie Sanders went on Fox News. Kamala Harris wouldn't go on the Joe Rogan. Like, if Kamala Harris had gone on the Joe Rogan podcast and explained to him, maybe she could have turned a few voters. Would it have changed the election? Probably not. But why is it? Because Bernie Sanders has no fear of the far right. He has no fear of speaking to Joe Rogan, because Bernie Sanders actually believes the things he says. Like, if you truly believe what you're saying, then nobody can really challenge you. So if you're fake, then you'll fall apart pretty quickly. That's why people like Tony Benn, Jeremy Corbyn, you don't have to like these individuals, but they never break down when they're being interviewed. Maybe, Jeremy Corbyn got a bit upset with a few questions, but generally they don't break, because they don't go off, they don't lie because there's nothing to lie about. They're going to be sincere because they actually believe what they're saying. If you don't believe what you're saying, it's very difficult for you to remain sincere. Manchurian again, thank you so much for that super chat. Harris is Trump's only nemesis. Avoided as something. the image didn't appear. Avoided as something nickname. I think a way of attacking Trump would be, calling him out as a narcissist as well, poking him. But you have to be. It's disappointing that it comes down to personalities. It shouldn't be about personalities. So it's important that whoever the Democrats put up, it's somewhat important that it's about that they have somebody with a personality, somebody who's good at talking, somebody who's good at standing their ground. I forget what his name is, the candidate for vice president on Harris's side. What was his name? Wallace. I forget what his name is. He was authentic. He seemed like a reasonable individual. He came across as a regular guy. You know, he would have been a much better candidate. But then the problem was the incumbency. People were thinking about Joe Biden. Joe Biden should not have run a second time. He should have stepped aside. But he's a narcissist. Peter, once again, thanks so much. Have you seen George Carlin on voters and politics? I've seen most of his stuff, so I've probably seen that one, but I don't remember. But I think he was like saying about how politicians they come from the public. So, you know, if the politicians are shit, it's probably because the public are shit. It's not something you're going to hear many politicians say, or you won't see it as a slogan. The public suck. I think that's what he said. But it's true. You know, the same people who voted for Brexit, the same fishermen, fisherwomen, farmers who voted for Brexit are the same people who voted for Boris Johnson in 2019 and voted for Nigel Farage in 2024. So, you know, Tim Walz, sorry about that, I forgot his name. I would have voted for him. I would have voted for him too. So, guys, the Stellantis Vauxhall issue is in some part is related to Brexit because it makes it more difficult for the company to access the parts and the staff, of course, because of Brexit. But I think a bigger problem as well is the fact that, you know, manufacturing in Europe is on the decline at the moment because we're able to import high quality, low priced goods from China. And, you know, we can try and push back with tariffs. We can try and push back with protectionism. And we may see some of that, but it's fighting the wind. You know, we have to adjust. We have to realize, look, we can't defeat China when it comes to manufacturing in this way. We have to find an alternative. We have to do something different. So, guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. So I want to say thank you so much to everyone who came on tonight. Thank you so much for your super chats. Do check out the debate on RTE. It's probably on RTE as we speak, or maybe it's already over. Well, we'll see. Have a great week, and I'll see you on Friday, same bad time, same bad channel. Take care to everyone, and thanks to everyone for the super chats, the likes, and doing the moderation, which is always great. Thank you so much for that. Before we finish, we have our one for the road, so I hope you enjoyed this. It's short and sweet.
Right, let's have a look at this Irish rich people apartment, 1.8 million in Dublin. Hang on, why the fuck does the elevator go straight into the house? I'm rich, give me a fucking door. Right, so now we're going to head into the lovely kitchen, and here are the... Alright, apparently you don't want me to look at that. Of course, we have our uncomfortable rich people chairs. You have to have these if you're rich, and no cushions, because they're for poor people. I'm just going to sit completely upright and watch a film with a cold arse. Now we are moving into our tiny garden. You didn't even fucking hoover the fake grass. There's absolutely no room for activities here. A burglar could just take the elevator right into your house and walk out with that garden on his back. Lovely view of our inefficient public transport. The bathroom is lovely. You've got one of them baths that stands up by itself. This is underwhelming, to be honest. You know the world has gone to shite when I'm starting to feel sorry for rich people. Hang on. Do I have to sleep on the fucking floor? The money I'm after forking out for this place. Another bathroom with a huge window so you feel uncomfortable about your body. Follow me. I'm delighted.
So, guys, have a great week. I'll see you on Friday. Same bad time, same bad channel. Stay safe. Take care. And good night.